Hey, this is Jamey with Stillmeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism, or a few mechanisms, in Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization. I don't own this game. I've played it recently on Board Game Arena for the first time. Now, I should say, obviously, I have played Through the Ages. I designed a Civilization game called Tapestry. I needed to play Through the Ages. However, I hadn't played the new version, which is A New Story of Civilization, which is basically a revised version of Through the Ages, as I understand it. Once they had a ton of data, years of data that went into revamping the game, giving it new art, a new layout, and certain new mechanisms. And it's been a long time since I played the original. But I played this new version on Board Game Arena, and one of my main qualms about the original game, which was that it felt very fiddly, went away because Board Game Arena managed that fiddliness for me. In particular, the card row. Through the Ages has a wonderful card row, this tantalizing, tempting card row that you are buying cards from or acquiring cards from. And every turn, at least one of those cards is definitely going to go away, and probably more because other players are going to take them as well. So it adds this wonderful tension to the game of seeing like what you want in the card row, what you can use. You're always getting something cool and bringing it into your hand if you want to spend an action on it or actions. But in real life, you actually have to manage that card row. You have to like slide every card over to fill in the spaces that you've taken cards from. Board Game Arena does that for you, so it's a great implementation. So I love that card row, and one thing I want to mention about that card row that I really like is that you're not actually spending resources. Part of the game is like acquiring resources and generating resources, and also science. But the core resource that you always get on every turn is actions. You're always going to have actions, and actions are the resource that you spend on getting cards. I think this was a really clever way of associating some sort of resource with the card row, rather than I guess, benefiting players who are just simply better at optimization and getting those resources, which they can use in plenty of other ways. They can definitely use those skills in other ways in the game. The game kind of opens it up and says, here's a resource that you will always have, and you can decide how much of that resource, the actions, you want to spend on the cards. You can spend fewer actions to get cards that are closer to the left side of the card row, or more if you want to go and reach for the end of the card row and get maybe some cards that are maybe more powerful, but they're randomized. They may maybe not necessarily be more powerful. They're just a card that you really want for your strategy, and you have to spend more actions to get it. I think that's really clever. However, my favorite mechanism of the game is part of this blurry photo here, this card right here. And I don't remember this from the original game. I hope this is unique to Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization, hence why I'm talking about it in this video. And that is the political card deck and the political cards. I think these are so clever, so clever. Basically, the mechanism is that you, at the end of your turn, and Board Game Arena did it automatically for me. I don't even know exactly how many of these you're supposed to get, but Board Game Arena, at the end of your turn, gives you some political cards. And at the beginning of your turn, you can choose if you want to add a political card to the card deck that impacts everyone. So this is an important distinction. You are not playing a political card. In many games, you might have an event card. I talked about Villainous recently. In Villainous, you play fate cards. You are not playing a political card. Rather, you are adding it to the deck. And in the act of adding it to the deck, it also means that you are playing a random political card from the deck, or a card from the top of the deck will be played. I assume in real life a shuffle happens after you add the card. I'm guessing you add a card, you shuffle, then you draw the top card of the deck. I'm not exactly sure. But the point is that you are not playing a card, you're adding to the deck, and a random card, possibly one that you previously added to the deck, is being played, and it impacts all players. Some of these cards look at strength. They might compare the strongest player to the weakest player. Other cards just benefit everybody. Other cards might hurt everybody, or they might look at some other status for all players. But I love how this works, because it means that if you don't want an event to happen, you simply don't play a political card. You don't play a card. And at the same time, if you are interested in an event happening, or you want to get cards in the deck that will eventually benefit you, you can choose from the cards in your hand and slip them into that deck at the beginning of your turn, or slip one of them into the deck. So if you decide, like in the game that I played a 4-player game, I was fairly focused on military. And so I wanted to play. I wanted to put cards in that deck that benefited the strongest player because I was often the strongest player in terms of military. But there are also plenty of like just good for everyone cards. I like those types of cards in games, and so I was put every time I had one of those, I would put a good for everyone card in the deck because even though I knew it was benefiting other players, it was also giving me something fun, and everyone was feeling good about it. I love this system. Really, really love this system. It's essentially a deck building system, but where you are making decisions that will possibly in the future benefit you if the card is randomly drawn. But you're also collectively building a deck that can impact all players. And I love that decision of deciding, okay, I'm gonna add a card to the deck, and therefore a card will be played, versus not adding a card to the deck at all, and not having a card be played at the beginning of your turn. Brilliant mechanism. Absolutely love that. And if you can think of anything like that in another game, whether it's a competitive game or cooperative game, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in the comment below. And if you can think of any other games that use card rows in a similar way to Through the Ages, and perhaps in a way that's a little less fiddly, and I think Nations actually does it in a less fiddly way because they're not actually sliding the deck over, as far as I remember, or the cards over in Nations, as far as I remember. I think you were just replacing a card. That makes it a lot easier. When you're replacing cards instead of sliding them over in card rivers, makes it a lot easier. Or in some games, you might place a coin on cards that are farther away. Century Spice Road does this, so you have to like place coins as you go further along the row. That prevents less need to like slide cards over as you're playing as well. I think that's a clever approach to it. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about both those mechanisms, or if you have a different favorite mechanism for Through the Ages, a new story of civilization, in the comments below. Thanks.